Hi, good morning, everyone. Today is Tuesday, right? Like yesterday, Martin Luther King. So hopefully everybody have a good weekend. So today we will talking about piggy. Okay, look at the pig. The pig is this one is so cute, right? And the piggy, they very helpful for us. We need them, okay? Um, and usually people say piggy is a dirty, but basically not. Pig is a really clean, okay? They're very clean. So the thing is, in the South country, pig you can find pig everywhere around the world, everywhere. Okay, you can see them. And some country is hotter than the other one. And pig, they like to cool off, right? They don't like hot weather. So whenever it's hot, the pig will running on the mud to keep them cool off. But basically, they really clean. Okay, and the pig is a very helpful for us. They provide a lot of things for us, even the medicine. They said they can use something from pig to make the medicine too. So and fertilize and glue, the lot of things. Okay, from the pig. So that's why you see pig everywhere. We like them. Okay, and uh, in the wild, the pig they eat everything they can find, leaf, fruit, food, to rodent. Okay, anything they can find. Okay, so pig they give birth for a little of young called piglets. Okay, the baby pig they call piglets, and some pig they can give for about 5, 10 piglets at the same time. Okay, and uh, the mother pig, they will nursery the piglet for a while, for at least 3 to 5 weeks. So, and after that, the piglet can be on their own, right? Okay, so the pig, most of the time, you see, they really heavy. The baby one is about 2.5 pounds, but the big one, they can be about 400 300 to 700 pounds. That's really heavy, right? Okay, and fish have a poor eyesight. They cannot see very well, but they have a very good sense of the smell. They can smell that, so they can. And they said the pig, the pig is have a very good memory, and they smarter than dog. That's what the scientists say. Okay, so and some fact about pig is they basically they very clean. Okay, and they smarter than dog, and they like to love rocky bellies. They like to rub right here. Okay, that's what the big like. Okay, just like dog, I think so. Okay, and big have a very good sense of direction. They can remember the way to come back home. Okay, and they have an excellent memory. If they see you sometime and for a few long time come back, they still remember you. Okay, so I and pig they have a little bit different kind of pig. So this is a baby piglets they really cute, right? So I will show you a few different kind of pig so you can see what the difference. Okay, this one the variety they see they have different colors, white, brown, and a little bit light brown there. Okay, and I will show you a few more of the pickies so you can see what the difference of them. Okay, so have a color like black and white. Okay, so let's see the next one. This is the hand-side pig. They see black and white, and they have a white right in the front. Right there, look interesting, huh? Okay, so that's the next hand-side pig, and let's see which one the next one. Okay. Oh, look at this one.
That's a fuzzy pig.
Yeah, that's a funny pig, and you see The hair of the pig right here is just like the sheep, right? You remember the sheep? They have a curly hair like that, and they can use that to make like the coat or something, right? So that's the kind of the pig like this. We don't see this one often, huh? We see the other one more. Okay, let's see. Do we have more on that? Oh, this one. Look at this one. In the Korean China pig, you see they a little bit longer than the other one, right? Their body a little bit long, more than the other regular pig. So this is the Korean China pig. So you see, pig, they have a different kind of pig and different kind of color. Okay, so I just show you a few of the pigs so you see what the difference between them. Okay.
That was a China pig?
Yeah, they longer than the other one, right? Okay, so now we will try to draw a pig today. Okay, so let's see. So right here, I hope you can see that. Okay, let me bring closer so you can see better. Okay, I think it's okay. So you see the pig right here, Patricia. You can see that. You can see, right, Patricia? Hold on, let me move a little bit so Patricia can see. Okay. So we start with the brick. Usually they round shape, right? And start with the head first. So let's see. Everything simple, right? Just a round shape right here. Okay. Can you see everything? Okay. So the picking have a ear right there. Okay. So just one right here, one right there. Okay. Okay, so mhm, okay. So you have the ear. You want to try to do that at home, Patricia? Yeah. Okay, so everything is round shape, so it's easy, right? So that's the eye there. Mhm. Okay, so a little bit inside here. Okay, so that's the eye.
Sweetie, you're going too fast. I don't even know how.
Yeah, just go the circle, okay? One big circle and the triangle on the ear.
Triangle on the ear?
The ear. Uh-huh.
Just two?
Yeah. We usually have two ear, right? The animal the same thing. They have two ear. And two circle for the eye.
How does that look?
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's good. That's good. And you know the piggy they have a big nose. So one circle right here. Okay.
Is it like, oh, that's hard.
Mhm.
Take my time, Laura.
Yep. Okay, so that's the nose right there.
Is that good, sweetie?
Uh-huh.
Look, that one.
Okay, so just try to do the best you can and later you will show your friend, okay? Uh-huh. This good job, Vicky.
How about me, sweetie?
Uh-huh. You did good. Oh, let me see my pen here. See, you have a two dot inside for the nose.
Two dots inside of the nose?
Uh-huh.
I did it, sweetie. I'm taking my
Okay,
time.
and
A mouth?
the mouth. Uh-huh. So we have the piggy face, right? This one we have an ear, eye, nose, and mouth. Okay. 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 So now we go to the body. This is a big, big. Okay.
Like that.
And the pig they have a short foreleg, but the leg is short, right? Okay, so we have a one right here. Good. Okay, one more right here. That's the front leg.
Like that?
Okay, so that's one there. Okay, so
My feet tree.
Okay, so connect this one. Okay.
I can't see. Trying, but I'm trying, it's too hard.
You can do that. Okay. So they have four legs, right? This is a leg on the back. So one more on the other side.
This one's long. And certainly biting the sleep and biting that. Yeah, I know.
Okay, and one line right here. Okay, so now we go to the front leg. So you just one line here. One in here. Okay, connect this one. So we have that one right here. So just connect this. Yep. So there one more that side, just a square. And a square right here. Square right here. And the pig, they have a tail, but their tail is really short, right?
Yeah.
So it's just like this. So you have the piggy. That's simple, right? Yep. I see somebody finished already and want to show their friend here. So Mark lay down over the first. Okay, come here, Mark. Go around this way, Mark. Be careful. Okay, so here, Mark. Okay, so here. Yeah, so right there. Here, up for party and go up here. See, that's Mark. Vicky, thank you, Mark. Good job. Okay. Okay, Mark, attire. Mark, attire your turn. Okay. Okay, let's see, Mark. That's Mark attire. Okay. So this Mark attire got the pic here, and that's what he did. Mark attire, very good job, Mark. Thank you. And who else? Oh, you, Katie. Okay. Okay, this way. Okay, let's see. That Katie Pinky here. Oh, so cute. Katie and here Patricia. Okay, so that Katie Pinky, very good, very good job. Okay, who next?
I do.
Tegan. Tegan want to show you where.
The best part is,
Okay, this way, Tegan. This way.
look, Laura, how's that?
Awesome. Here,
That's
show the
awesome.
camera. Go around.
the tree so they can see it on the
Yeah,
Yeah, no, yeah, this way.
Yeah.
Oh,
So everyone can see. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Look,
Okay,
Laura.
okay. So right here, that Tina and her Vicky right
Is
here.
that good?
Very good, Tina. And let's see, let Patricia see. Okay, Patricia, you see that, Patricia?
Is that gonna take?
Thank you. Good job,
How's that
Tina.
for?
Oh, let Vicky.
Can I take it home? Look, Grace.
Very good. Rochelle, your turn. Okay, let's see, Vicky, big apple Vicky. Oh, look at that. Really cute, Vicky. And she even signed her name there. Good job, Vicky. Okay, nice work, Vicky. Thank you. Okay, who else? Julie? Okay. This way, Julie. Okay, so your friend here, here. Okay, so that children picky here, then right here. Very good. Okay, good job, children. Thank you. Oh, Shannon. Shannon.
Let's do home.
Now you can color your pink, okay? Any color you like. Okay, let's see Shannon here. Let's see. Oh, look at Shannon picking. Very good. Shannon, nice job. Okay. Okay, let's see so Patricia here. Okay, so Patricia, that's good. Thank you, Shannon. Good job. Rochelle, do you have anything, Rochelle? Okay, so Rochelle.
I'm back.
Okay, let's see Rochelle. Oh, look at that. That's Rochelle artwork right there. Nice. Very good. See? She did good. Very good, Rochelle. Thank you, Rochelle. Okay, yay. Everybody did a good job today. Okay? So, Patricia, did you do anything right there? Good. Okay, thank you, everyone, and see you next week. Okay? Bye, everyone. Have a nice day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Like mine?
Oh, yeah, very good.
Grace is gonna be.
Oh,
Grace is gonna be.
Grace, okay.
Grace is a good one.
Yeah. Thank you. I think.
Hello, are we ready? All right, so we're gonna read some more today from this side of the book even. The Trumpet of the Swan. Getting a little glare off of it, sorry. And as you can see, we're still in our keeping lots of coverage for the germs. So that's fine. And if you remember, this chapter was going to be chapter 11 about camp. Can I say it?
Yes.
Couscous. It sounds like couscous, but that's something you eat and it has the letter C in it. And this has the letter K. Couscous. Camp Couscous was on a small lake deep in the woods of Ontario, Canada. There were no summer cottages on the lake, no outboard motors to make noise, no roads with cars rushing by. It was a wilderness lake, just right for boys. Mr. Beaver left Sam and Lewis at the end of a dirt road, and they finished their journey to camp by canoe. So the road doesn't even go to the camp; it's way out there, and he has to take Lewis this one with him. Now Lewis could have swam, but there they go in a canoe, and they've got his little sleeping bag and stuff with them to go the rest of the way to the camp. Sam sat in the stern, which is the rear of the canoe, and paddled. Lewis stood in the bow and looked straight ahead. Like he's like, on the ships how they have those like, sometimes they have a lady or something at the front of the ship that's like, that's how Lewis was at. He was just pointing straight ahead for them. The camp consisted of one big log cabin where everyone ate, and then there were 7 tents where boys and the counselors slept, a dock out front where boats can come, and a privy out back. Okay, I'll have to look that up, but I think it's just kind of an area where you can hang out. So like a yard, maybe. The woods closed in all around, but there was a bare spot that had been made into a tennis court. And there were plenty of canoes in which to take trips to other lakes. There were about 40 boys in the camp. When Sam's canoe grounded on the sandy beach, so it comes right into the ground, Lewis stepped ashore wearing his slate, his chalk pencil, and his trumpet. About 20 boys rushed down to the landing to see what was going on. They could hardly believe their eyes. Hey, look what's here, one of the boys yelled. A bird, cried another. Look at the size of him. So you can imagine you see pigeons and stuff around now, you can see this giant swan. Everybody crowded around Lewis, wanting to get a close look at the new camper. Sam had to push some of the boys back to keep Lewis from getting crushed. Well, take it easy, will ya? Sam said. That evening after supper, the director of the camp, Mr. Brickle, built a big campfire in front of the main lodge. The boys gathered around. They sang songs and toasted marshmallows. Maybe they made some more. And also they squatted mosquitoes. Got me. So too late, they've already bit you. Let's see. Lewis did not join the group. He's a swan and they're boys. He stood by himself at a little distance. So here they are around the campfire, and here's Lewis over off to the side here. He's just kind of letting the boys do their boy things. And so after a while, the counselor, Mr. Brickle, got up on his feet and addressed the boys and the counselors. I call your attention, he said, to a new camper in our midst, Lewis the Swan. He is a trumpeter swan, a rare bird. We are very lucky to have him. I have employed him at the same salary I pay my junior counselors. $100 for the season. What a deal. He is gentle, but he has a speech defect. He came here from Montana with Sam Beaver. Lewis is a musician. Like most musicians, he is in need of money. Okay? He will take you at daybreak. He will wake you at daybreak with his trumpet. He will call you to meals. And at night, when you are dropping off to sleep, he will play taps. And that will bring the day to a close. I caution you to treat him as an equal and to treat him with respect. He packs a terrific wallop with one of those wings. Now, you better be nice to him or peck. I now introduce, for your listening pleasure, Lewis the Swan. Take a bow, Lewis. Lewis was kind of embarrassed by all this attention, but he came forward and bowed. He then raised his trumpet to his mouth and blew a long call. When he finished, from the opposite shore of the lake came the echo. Ho, ho! Cool. The boys clapped. Lewis bowed again. Sam Beaver, sitting with the others, his mouth full of marshmallows, was delighted that his plan had succeeded. At the end of the summer, Lewis would have $100. A boy named Applegate Skinner, what's his first name, Applegate? Okay, he stood up. Mr. Brickle, he said, what about me? I don't really care about birds. As a matter of fact, I've never liked birds. Well, okay, Applegate, said Mr. Brickle. You don't have to like birds. If that's the way you feel about, just go on ahead not liking birds. Everyone is entitled to his likes and dislikes and to his prejudices. Come to think of it, I don't care much for pistachio ice cream. I don't know why I don't like it, but I don't. Do not forget, however, that Lewis is one of your counselors. Whether you like him or not, he must be treated with respect. And that's a good lesson we can all have. One of the new boys who had never been to camp before stood up. Mr. Brickle, he said, why is this camp called Camp Couscous? What does Couscous mean? And we get to find out. It's an Indian name for the great horned owl, replied Mr. Brickle. The new boy thought about that for a minute. Well, then why didn't you call it Camp Great Horned Owl instead of Camp Couscous? Because, replied Mr. Brickle, a boys' camp should have a peculiar name. Otherwise, it doesn't sound interesting. Couscous is a terrific name. It's a long word, but it only has 3 letters in it. It has 2 S's, 3 K's, and 6 O's. You don't find many names as kooky as that. And the stranger the name, the better the camp. And probably the better you'll remember the name, too. Anyway, welcome to Camp Couscous. It rhymes with moose. That's another good thing about it. And now it's time for everybody to go to bed. You may take a swim before breakfast tomorrow. Ooh. And you don't need to wear your swim trunks. Hello. Just jump out of bed when you hear the trumpet of the Swan. Strip off your pajamas, race to the dock, and dive in. Oh, that sounds so cool. I will be there ahead of you to do my celebrated backflip from the diving tower. It freshens me up for the hard day ahead. Good night, Lewis. Good night, Sam. Good night, Applegate. Good night, all. The light was fading. The boys straggled off to their tents in the darkness. The senior counselors sat together on the porch and smoked one last pipe. Sam crawled in under his blankets in tent number 3. Lewis walked to a high, flat rock by the shore and stood there, waiting. When the lights were all out, he faced the camp, raised his horn to his mouth, and blew taps. Now, it's got the little taps on here, and I forgot that today is live streaming day, but next time I'll get a little YouTube where we can hear what the tap song sounds like and what the reveille song sounds like, that he'll wake them up in the morning, and what the mess call for lunchtime is. But it's got the notes here, and it's got the words, and it's all the song itself. Usually it's just played on the horn, but it does have words, and it's day is done, gone the sun, from the lake, from the hills, from the sky, all is well, safely rest, God is nigh. So it's a kind of a nice way of saying good night. The last note seemed to linger on the still waters of the lake. From their beds, the boys heard the beautiful sound. They felt sleepy and serene and happy. All but Applegate Skinner, who didn't care for birds at bedtime. But even Applegate so soon asleep, along with the others in his tent. He was asleep and he was snoring. People who dislike birds often snore. A deep peace fell over Camp Couscous. And here is Lewis out there on the flat rock, blowing the trumpet for them. Oh my goodness, chapter 12 is entitled A Rescue. My, what's going to happen? Lewis liked to sleep on the lake because, birds can do that, but we can't. At night, after blowing taps, he would waddle down to the sandy beach by the dock. And there he removed his slate, his chalk pencil, and his trumpet, and hid them under a bush. Then he shoved off into the water. As soon as he was afloat, he would tuck his head under a wing. For a while, he would doze and think about home and his parents. Then he would think about Serena, how beautiful she was and how much he loved her. Pretty soon, he would be fast asleep. Then when daylight came, he would swim ashore and eat a light breakfast of water plants. Then he'd put on his things, climb onto the flat rock again, and blow reveille. And that's like a peppy or two that becomes, wake up, somebody's making a happy noise. The boys, hearing the trumpet, would wake and rush to the dock to swim before breakfast, like the camp leader had told them. After supper, at night, the campers would often play volleyball. You guys know what volleyball is. You've seen that before, right?
It's at the beach
So a lot
outside,
of times they do play volleyball at the beach. That's right.
like the Huntington Beach.
Yeah, and look at Lewis loved the volleyball game. He couldn't hop around as fast as the boys, but he could reach out a long ways with his net and poke the ball into the air and over the net. It was very hard to get a ball past Lewis. He could return almost any shot. When the boys chose sides at the start of the game, Lewis was always the first one they chose. The boys loved camp life in Ontario. They learned how to handle a canoe. They learned how to swim. Sam Beaver took them on nature walks and taught them to sit quiet on a log and observe wild creatures and birds. I didn't show you that. Here's a picture of them all playing their volleyball game. So Lewis is there poking it into the air with his little feet. So anyway, Sam is telling them how to be respectful and quiet to the animals and birds. He showed them how to walk in the woods without making a lot of noise. That's real important if you want to see an animal. Sam showed them where the kingfisher held his nest. That's a bird, actually. It's called kingfisher, but it's a bird. His nest is a hole in the bank by a stream. He showed them the partridge and her chicks. Oh, that must be so cute. When the birds heard coo, 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 Sam told them they were listening to the saw-whet owl, smallest of the owls, no bigger than a man's hand. So sometimes in the middle of the night, the whole camp would wake to the scream of a wildcat. And do that. Growl, growl. The wildcat sounds scary because it is. Now, no one ever saw a wildcat, but his scream was heard at night, so they knew he was there. One morning when Sam was playing tennis with Applegate Skinner, Sam heard a clanking noise. He looked behind him, and there, coming out of the woods was a skunk. The skunk's head was stuck in a tin can, and he couldn't see where he was going. He kept bumping into trees and rocks, and the can went clank, clank, clank. That skunk is in trouble, said Sam, laying down his racket. He's been to the dump looking for food. He poked his head into that empty can, and now he can't get it out. The word spread quickly through the camp that a skunk had arrived. The boys came running to see what fun came running to see the fun. Mr. Brickle warned them not to get too close. The skunk might squirt them with perfume. Not a perfume you'd like to have, I think. So the boys danced around, keeping their distance and holding their noses. The big question was how to get the can off the skunk's head without getting squirted. He's going to need help, said Sam. That skunk will starve to death if we don't get that can off. All of the boys had suggestions. One boy said they should make a bow and arrow, tie a string to the arrow, and shoot the arrow at the can. Then, when they hit the can, they could pull the string and the can would come off the skunk's head. Nobody thought too much of that idea. It sounded like too much work. Another boy suggested that two boys climb a tree and one boy can hang by his feet from the other boy's hands. And when the skunk walked under the tree, the boy who was hanging by his feet could reach down and pull the can off. And if the skunk squirted, the perfume wouldn't hit the boy because he'd be hanging in the air. nobody thought too much of that suggestion either. Mr. Brickle didn't like it at all. He said it was extremely impractical, and furthermore, he would not permit them to do that. Another boy suggested that they get a block of wood, this sounds brilliant, smear it with glue, and then when the skunk knocked against it, the can would stick to the block of wood. Nobody thought much of that suggestion either. Mr. Brickle said he didn't have any glue anyway. While everyone else was making suggestions, Sam Beaver walked quietly to his tent. He returned in a few minutes with a long pole and a piece of fishing line. Sam tied one end of the fishing line to the pole. Then he tied a slip knot in the other end of the line and formed a little noose. He climbed to the roof of the porch and asked the other boys not to get too close to the skunk. The skunk all this time was blundering around, blindly bumping into things. It was really sad. Now here's Sam. He's got up on the roof with his little fishing line and his fishing pole, and he's dangling his little noose or knot or whatever you call it down. So, because it says he got the other boys to stay farther away. Sam, holding onto his pole, waited patiently on the roof. He looked like a fisherman waiting for a bite. When the skunk wandered close to the building, Sam reached over, dangled the noose in front of the skunk, slipped the noose around the can, and gave it a jerk. The noose tightened, and the can came off. Yay! As it did so, the skunk turned around and squirted right at Mr. Brickle. Ah! He jumped back, stumbled, and fell. All the boys danced around, holding their noses. Ah, skunk! The skunk ran off into the woods. Mr. Brickle got up and dusted himself off. The air smelled strong of skunk. Mr. Brickle smelled too. Congratulations, Sam, said Mr. Brickle. You have aided a wild creature and given Camp Couscous a delicious dash of wild perfume. I'm sure we'll all remember this malodorous event for a long time to come. I don't see how we could possibly forget it. Ho-ho! Cried Lewis, lifting his trumpet. The lake echoed with the sound. The air was heavy with the rich, musky smell of skunk. The boys danced and danced, holding their noses. Some of them held their stomachs and pretended to throw up. Then Mr. Brickle announced it was time for the morning swim. A swim will clear the air, he said, as he walked away towards his cottage to change his clothes. After lunch each day, the campers went to their tents for a rest period. Some of them read books. Some wrote letters home, telling their parents how bad the food was. Some just lay on their cots and talked. One afternoon during rest period, I'm sorry, what?
How am I gonna do this to my kid?
Oh, well, we're going to listen to the story right now, not for too much longer. One afternoon during rest period, the boys in Applegate's tent began teasing him about his name. Well, I was wondering about that too. Applegate Skinner, said one boy. Where did you get such a crazy name, Applegate? Oh, my parents gave it to me, replied Applegate. What did they think? I know what his name is, said another boy. Sour Applegate. Sour Applegate Skinner. The boys laughed at this and began shouting, Sour Applegate, Sour Applegate, Sour Applegate. Quiet, said the tent leader. I don't think it's funny, said Applegate. His name isn't Sour Applegate, whispered another boy. Ooh, his name is Wormy Applegate. Wormy Applegate Skinner. That suggestion was greeted with screams of laughter. Oh, quiet, bellowed the tent leader. I want quiet in this tent and leave Applegate alone. Leave Wadden Applegate alone, whispered one boy. And some of the other boys had to pull their pillows over their heads so that their snickers couldn't be heard by their leader. Applegate was sore. In this way, sore is kind of like mad, not like ouchie sore. When the rest period was over, he wandered down to the dock. He didn't like being made fun of, and he wanted to do something to get even. Ooh, that's not good. Without saying anything to anybody, he slid a canoe into the water and paddled out onto the lake, heading for the opposite shore, which is a mile away. That's a long ways. No one noticed him leave. So here he is looking at the little canoes, and I guess he helped himself to one to go down to try to get across the lake. He had no business taking the canoe out alone. He had not passed his swimming test. He had not passed his canoe test. He was disobeying a camp rule. When he was a quarter of a mile from shore, in deep water, the wind grew stronger. The waves got higher. The canoe was hard to manage, and Applegate got scared. Suddenly, a wave caught the canoe and spun it around. Applegate leaned hard on his paddle. His hand slipped and he lost his balance. The canoe tipped over. Applegate found himself in the water. His clothes felt terribly soggy and heavy. His shoes dragged him down, and he could barely keep his head above water. Instead of hanging on to the canoe, he started swimming towards shore, which was a crazy thing to do, because remember, he didn't pass the swimming test yet. One wave hit him right in the face, and he got a mouthful of water. He went out. "Help!" he screamed. "Help me, I'm drowning! It'll give the camp a bad name if I drown! Help, help!" Counselors sprinted to the waterfront. They jumped into canoes and rowboats and started for the drowning boy. One counselor kicked his moccasins off, dove in, and began swimming toward Applegate. Now he's a quarter of a mile away. That's pretty far. Mr. Brickle raced to the dock, climbed to the diving tower, and directed the rescue operation, shouting through a megaphone. "Hang on to the canoe, Applegate," he shouted. "Don't leave the canoe." But Applegate had already left the canoe. He was all alone, thrashing about and wasting his strength. He felt sure he would soon go to the bottom and drown. He felt weak and scared. Water had gotten into his lungs, and he couldn't last much longer. The first boat to get away from the dock was rowed by Sam Beaver, and Sam was pulling hard at the oars, straining every muscle. But things didn't look good for Applegate. The boats were still a long way from the boy. What's going to happen? When the first cry of "help" was heard in the camp, Lewis was coming around the corner of the main lodge. He spied Applegate immediately and responded to the call. "I can't fly out there," thought Lewis, "because my flight feathers have been falling out lately." Probably a bird thing, right? "But I can certainly make better time than those boats in the water." Dropping his slate and his chalk pencil and his trumpet, Lewis splashed into the water and struck out, beating his wings and kicking with his great webbed feet. A swan, even in summer when he can't fly, can scoot across the water at high speed. Lewis's powerful wings beat the air. His feet churned the waves as though he were running on top of the water. In a moment, he passed all the boats. When he reached Applegate, he quickly dove, pointing his long neck between Applegate's legs, and then came back to the surface with Applegate sitting on his back. See how big he is? And he's got the boy is now on his back. So he's out of the water, so that's great. Cheers came from the people on the shore and in the boats. Applegate clung to Lewis's neck. He had been saved in the nick of time. In another minute, and he would have gone to the bottom for sure. Water would have filled his lungs. He would have been a goner. "Thank God," shouted Mr. Brickle through his megaphone. "Great work, Lewis. Camp Kookooskoos will never forget this day. The reputation of the camp has been saved. Our record for safety is still untarnished." Really, that's what they're worried about? Their reputation? Lewis didn't pay much attention to all that shouting. He swam very carefully over to Sam's boat, and Sam pulled Applegate into the boat and helped him into the stern seat. "You looked pretty funny riding on a swan," said Swan, "and you're lucky to be alive. You are not supposed to go out alone in a canoe." But Applegate was too scared or wet to say anything. He just sat and stared straight ahead, spitting a lot of water out of his mouth and breathing hard. At supper that night, Mr. Brickle placed Lewis at his right in the place of honor. And when the meal was over, he rose and made a speech. "We also saw what happened on the lake today. Applegate Skinner broke a camp rule, took a canoe out alone, and upset it." Oh, and he was upset. He was drowning when Lewis the Swan, rapidly outdistancing all other campers, reached his side, held him up, and saved his life. Let us all give Lewis a standing ovation. Yeah. The boys and the counselors stood up. They cheered and clapped and beat on tin plates with spoons. Then they sat down, and Lewis looked embarrassed. So here they are, all making a big fuss over Lewis's good deed. And then here's for you, Patricia. So they're all beating on plates and everything. And, Lewis is kind of shy about all this attention. "And now, Applegate," said Mr. Brickle, "I hope the rescue has caused you to change your opinion of birds. The first day you were here in camp, you told us you didn't care for birds. How do you feel now?" "Well, I feel sick to my stomach," said Applegate. "It makes you feel sick to your stomach to almost drown. My stomach still has a lot of water in it." "Yes, but what about birds?" asked Mr. Brickle. Applegate thought hard for a moment. "Well," he said, "I'm grateful to Lewis for saving my life, but I still don't like birds." "Really?" said Mr. Brickle. "That's pretty remarkable. Even though a bird saved you from drowning, you don't care for birds? What have you got against birds?" "Nothing really," replied Applegate. "I have nothing against them. I just don't care for them." "Okay," said Mr. Brickle. "I guess we'll just have to leave it at that." But the camp was very proud of Lewis. "Here's our most distinguished counselor, a great trumpet player, a great bird, a powerful swimmer, and a fine friend. He deserves a medal. I intend to write a letter of recommendation that he be given the life-saving medal." And Mr. Brickle did that. He wrote the letter. And a few days later, a man arrived from Washington with the life-saving medal. And while all the campers watched, he hung the medal around Lewis's neck, alongside the trumpet and the slate and the chalk pencil. It was a beautiful medal, and it was engraved. It was engraved with the words, "To Lewis the Swan, who, with the outstanding courage and complete disregard for his own safety, saved the life of Applegate Skinner." So here's a picture of him. Let's see if you can see this. So now he's got his chalk slate and his trumpet, but also hanging around his neck is a little medal he has received, saying that he's very courageous. That's very nice. Lewis took out his slate and wrote, "Thank you for this medal. It is a great honor." But he thought to himself, "I'm beginning to get overloaded with stuff around my neck. I've got a trumpet, I've got a slate, I've got the chalk pencil, and now I've got a medal. I'm beginning to look like a hippie. I hope I'll still be able to fly when my flight feathers grow in again." That night, when darkness came, Lewis blew the most beautiful taps he had ever blown. The man who had brought the medal was listening and watching. He could barely believe his ears and eyes. When he returned to the city, he told people what he had seen and heard. Lewis's fame was growing. His name was known. People all over were beginning to talk about the swan that could play a trumpet. Cool. So that is the end of this chapter. And so I think it's probably about time for us to finish. It's a little after 11:30. And so we shall save the next chapter, lucky number 13, the end of summer. So that's Lewis is doing pretty well there, isn't he?
Yes.
Yeah, and everybody loves him. So that's cool, except for maybe Applegate, but at least Applegate likes him now. So
Yeah.
so that's what we'll do. And then of course time we'll read some more on Thursday. But whenever there's time, we'll catch up with them. We're doing well. We're more than halfway through the book. And Lewis is certainly going to try to find that lady friend again, don't you think? So thank you very much for the time today.
Huh? I see. Yeah.